Are you having trouble drafting a Pokemon team? Do you have a little anxiety when you're looking at all these Pokemon and you're not sure which one to pick? Which ones go good with each other? Well, I have the video for you. This is FNF Victory Road Draft League Season 2, although it could apply to any season really. Draft Tips video. This is going to be going over some of the things that you should be looking for when you're drafting Pokemon, with additional considerations to the drafting process itself. So let's get started and look at some of the components when you should be drafting a Pokemon team. So first of all, you want a strong foundation. This is a very cliche quote, but when you build a house, you need to make sure the foundation's strong, and the same is absolutely true for a draft league. When you're drafting your team, you need to know what your style is going to be. Alright, so let's look into some of the common styles. First, we're going to look into stall and semi-stall. I'm going to use this example from Noob Scrub last league of the American Braviaries. He would fit into that stall category. Stall is a style that is very oriented at taking your opponent down slowly but surely while defending their hits and not allowing them to break through your walls. Good Pokemon that Noob Scrub drafted for stall, especially Mega Venusaur, Chansey, Empoleon, Toxapex, and Dusclops. These are pretty passive Pokemon. Mega Venusaur doesn't have to be passive, but they do have the ability to stall very effectively. With stall, you're looking at Toxic, you're looking at Leech Seed, you're looking at slow damage from hazards, you're looking at rest, you're looking at recover, you're looking at regenerator, ways that you can restore your HP, keep your HP high, lots of leftovers, lots of recovering, while slowly whittling away your opponent's HP. That's the cornerstone of the stall style. This says stall and semi-stall, but I meant to put balance. So next we're going to look at balance. We're going to take a look at Dutch Inkays, which is Quest Requested's team last time. Balance has elements of stall and hyper offense, which we'll look into in a bit. Balance is kind of in between the two. Balance has some dedicated sweepers, some dedicated walls, and some utility Pokemon, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to find good circumstances for your attacking mons to come out, but otherwise you're going to be defending effectively and setting up what you need to set up. So that's the gist of balance, and you can see here where we have Mega Steelix and Amoonguss on that defensive side. We have Hydreigon and Azumarill, more of the attack types, and then some utility Pokemon like Hitmonlee, for example, Jolteon with pivoting. So that's gonna be what you're looking for in balance, and we'll go over some of these Pokemon roles as we go on too. And then finally, hyper offense and bulky offense. Tiller is a good example of an offensive playstyle. You have a lot of Pokemon that punch holes through the other team very fast, like Tapu Koko, for example, which can go extremely fast. Raichu Alola, especially with that electric terrain, Zygarde 10%, and even some bulky offense Pokemon in there too, like Golisopod and Buzzwole. So these are Pokemon that just want to plow through the opponent's team. Stall and semi-stall again. I meant to put themed, not stall and semi-stall. Sorry, I don't know why I did that. Themed teams. This is, for example, a Rain Dance team. Startoad is a good example of that, where you're setting up Rain to be able to sweep. And Mega Swampert's the one who really wants to sweep in the rain. Politoed and Pelipper being the rain setters. Okay, so rain is also an example of theme, and theme doesn't have to just be rain. It could be other weathers, it could be Trick Room, it could be things like that. Alright? So that's a basic gloss over of common playstyles, but so think, do you want to just punch holes through things? Do you want to be able to defend and slowly whittle away at your opponent's HP? Do you want to kind of be versatile and have options to do both? Do you want a theme, like a weather theme, Trick Room theme? Once you answer those questions, then you can go on and consider what Pokemon will go in your team that fit your playstyle. Because you don't want to have a, for example, you don't want to have a super passive Pokemon offensive team, just like you don't want to have a very frail Pokemon on a stall team. So make sure you draft accordingly. Now we're going to look at key Pokemon because they are the foundation of when you're team building. Key Pokemon are the Pokemon that you build your team around, okay? And we just looked at Startoad. Startoad had Mega Swampert as a key Pokemon. I think he used Mega Swampert in all of his battles. His main sweeper in the rain. So that is a Pokemon that you want to make sure that you... like if this is your key Pokemon or whatever your key Pokemon is, you want to make sure that you draft it preferably early and you build your team around it. If Mega Swampert's going to be your sweeper, have a few Pokemon that set up the conditions for it to be able to sweep, aka rain. Okay, a different key Pokemon in a more defensive way could be Sylveon. Sylveon is a cleric, and it could heal Pokemon with Heal Bell and Wish, and it could act as glue for your team. An example, Lion Hugs drafted Sylveon last league, and it was their premier wall and cleric, so that could also be something to look into. Your key Pokemon doesn't just have to be offensive. And then Magneton, for example, maybe you have a steel type that necessarily needs to take out other steel types and also can attack, has a lot of different functions. Maybe Magneton is one of your key Pokemon, and that's something that you want to draft. So figure out what your key Pokemon is or what you want it to be, and then start building your team around that and make sure that you draft your key Pokemon early. So now we're going to look at team functions. So now that you have a sense of your play style, let's look at some of the Pokemon that go onto that play style. We have sweepers. This is really good for the hyper offense playstyle, not so much for the stall playstyle. Mega Charizard X being a physical sweeper, Mega Alakazam being a special sweeper. Sweepers are fast Pokemon that are typically fast and strong Pokemon that are typically fast that could rip through the opponent's team. Sometimes they go right off the bat and sweep. Sometimes they boost. In the case of Mega Charizard X, it boosts. In the case of Mega Alakazam, sometimes it just goes right off the bat and just plows through the team. Alright, so sweepers are something you want to look into, especially if you're running offense. Leads are also very good for offense, sometimes called suicide leads if their only purpose is to set up at the beginning of the game. They could set up favorable conditions for you and your team to be able to go and do what you got to do, especially hyper offense teams. Aerodactyl and Masquerades are good examples, setting up Stealth Rock and Sticky Web respectively. And these conditions can allow you to get your sweep on, especially for hyper offense. But leads are good for all kinds of teams. Typically, if you're running balance or bulky, stall, you're going to want a more defensive lead. But if you're running hyper offense, usually you're going to want a suicide lead because all you need to do is set up once and then go for it. Wall breakers are Pokemon that excel in attacking and don't really excel in anything else. Their main purpose is to get rid of walls, which we'll go over next. Good examples of wall breakers are Rampardos and Chandelure, who have very huge attacking stats on the physical and special side respectively, but might not be the fastest, aren't the best at defending, don't really have a lot of utility. They're more like punch holes and things and big nuke attacks. And then walls are like wall breakers, but on the defensive side. They're there to make sure that no matter how strong the opponent is, they could come in and tank a hit, possibly recover it off, maybe force them out with Toxic or get rid of their stat boosts with Haze. Good examples of walls are Chansey and Skarmory. Chansey is very good at walling, especially defensive, but also defensive attacks. And then Skarmory is physically defensive. So those are two good examples of walls. Tanks are Pokemon that could take a hit and deal a hit. So bulky Pokemon that have nice offense stats but aren't usually very fast. Snorlax is a good example of a tank, as well as Mega Venusaur. These are defensive Pokemon. They tend to go well on balanced teams because of the nature of how they can take a hit but also deal a hit back. Utility Pokemon, there's a lot you can do with utility Pokemon, and we'll go into utility a little bit. But they're usually Pokemon that fulfill functions that help the rest of your team, and they could be useful on every kind of team archetype. Fortress is a good example, being able to set up hazards and also remove hazards with Rapid Spin. And then Volbeat's a good example, having Prankster and a nice move pool to utilize Prankster with, for example, setting weather, and it could also pivot using U-turn. And then finally, we're looking at pivots like Jolteon and Tapu Koko. Jolteon being able to Volt Switch, Tapu Koko being able to Volt Switch and U-turn. These are Pokemon that keep up momentum for you, and by that I mean they can switch out after your opponent hard switches, or when your opponent's about to attack, switch into a more favorable Pokemon for you, which puts you in the advantage state. And in Pokemon, the more you're in the advantage state, or in most games, the more you're in an advantage state, the better for you. You could set up, you can attack, you could poke holes through the team, and keep the opponent under pressure. So pivots are also very useful. So we're going to look at Pokemon cores now. Pokemon cores are a group of 2 or 3 Pokemon usually that do very well with each other, in that they could cover each other's weaknesses and complement each other's strengths. So common cores are Water, Fire, Grass, because that elemental trio can cover the weaknesses of each other very well, both offensively and defensively. And Fairy, Steel, Dragon, for the same reasons. So for example, a Poison type threatens a Fairy type, the Steel can come in on the Poison move and then do what it's got to do. Fighting type threatens a Steel type, then a Fairy could come in, and Dragon just has very good resistances to things, so it can come in and wreak havoc usually. And then 2 Pokemon cores, for example, Skarmory and Blissey, which is a famous core from Gen 3, Skarmbliss. Skarmory handles the the physical attacks that threaten Blissey, could come in very easily on fighting types, and Blissey could handle the special attacks that come to Skarmory. They both have good synergy in terms of what they're weak to and what they can resist. So, good 2 Pokemon core. You want to make sure you have a core that can either defend against attacks, attack Pokemon, or both. So let's go over utility a little bit. Utility covers a lot of different things. Like I mentioned earlier, pivoting, keeping up that momentum, so some pivoting moves there. Status, being able to inflict the opponent with things that cause them to play in a compromised state. So, for example, if you're running Stall, very good to have is Toxic for damage over time, or even Will-O-Wisp to make sure that physical attackers can't break through your walls. They have a harder time. So status is very important. Sleep Powder maybe for opportunities to set up. Thunder Wave for the same reason. Item removal is a big utility function. Knockoff can get rid of troublesome items like a choice item, for example, or leftovers on a wall. And then you could also use Trick to trick your item onto the opponent, give them a bad item, and get their good one. Hazards. Hazards inflict damage when the opponent switches in. So Stealth Rock, for example, is the most popular one, but there's also Spikes, Toxic Spikes, and then Sticky Web can lower speed of Pokemon when they switch in, which can allow you to set up a sweep easier. And then there's also Hazard Removal, just like there's Hazards. Rapid Spin, the hazard removal of choice, but also there's Defog. I guess included in that there could be Hazard Reflection, like with Magic Balance and Magic Coat. Very good at getting rid of hazards, so you could preserve your Focus Sash, or you can make sure that your Pokemon don't get hurt, especially vulnerable ones like Volcarona, for example, that takes 50% from Stealth Rock. Spin blocking, so you have hazards, you have the hazard removal, which is the counter to hazards, and then you have spin blocking, which is the counter of hazards. You can send in a ghost type when you think the opponent's going to use rapid spin, like for example versus a Hitmontop, and because rapid spin doesn't affect the ghost, it won't remove the hazards, so you could keep those hazards up that way. There are clerics, which heal the HP and cure the status of other Pokemon on your team. You could do this with Wish, a good Wish Passer Passer is Chansey, for example, passing huge wishes. Wish is based on your HP, so Chansey wishes usually heal full HP. And then you have Heal Bell and Aromatherapy, which heal the status conditions of other Pokemon as well. Weather, self-explanatory. You could set up Weather with an ability that summons the weather, or by using one of the moves there next to Weather. Terrain, same thing, a little less common than Weather. Usually the abilities come from the Tapus. You won't see it manually set most of the time, but still something to be aware of, and something to be aware of in terms of the effect that these terrains have, because a lot of people forgot, for example, that Misty Terrain blocks status conditions, or Electric Terrain doesn't allow you to be asleep, or Grassy Terrain heals HP, Psychic Terrain blocks priority moves, so it would be good to review those terrains just in case. There are screens, Light Screen, which reduces the opponent's special attacks, Reflect, which reduces physical attacks, Aurora Veil, which does both but only works in Hail, and then Safeguard block status. So these are things to take into consideration. Anti-stall, which are measures that you can block stall very easily. Magic Bounce, for example, on Mega Sableye. You can't Toxic it, you can't Will-O-Wisp it, you can't do hazards against it because it bounces back any non-attack moves. Magic Coat is the same thing, but it's not an ability, it's a move. And then Taunt to prevent Pokemon from using moves like Toxic, for example, or Recover. And then finally there's phasing. This is when you get rid of Pokemon's boosts, or you just get rid of them in general. You could do that with Haze or Clear Smog, Whirlwind, Roar, or Dragon Tail. Very good when something's setting up in a very scary way versus you. So this is just some of the utility functions. There's others. These are some of the more common ones. You don't have to have one of everything, but it's good to know specifically what you need. So for example, on a hyper offense team, you're not really going to need status as much versus a stall team that you will want status Pokemon. Alright? So also something to consider is having some type immunities. Type immunities allow you to switch in Pokemon when it's convenient for you, when you believe that a move of a certain type will be coming, and that'll give you the advantage. Some examples of types that are immune. Ground type, immune to electric, really good for blocking Volt Switch. Ghost type is immune to normal attacks, so good for blocking Rapid Spin. Normal types are immune to ghost types. Fairy types are immune to dragon types, so good especially versus Rampage or any dragons that are using strong dragon moves. Dark is immune to Psychic. Steel is immune to Poison, very good versus stall teams. And then Flying and Levitate Pokemon are immune to Ground, so coming on an Earthquake. You also have to consider diversity and roles. So Pokemon can have certain roles on your team, and the diversity is basically how many roles do you have, how many different roles do you have, and what role does your Pokemon play, and how effectively does it play, can it switch roles. And I have two different Pokemon. Megalopony is an example of a Pokemon that has one role but does it really well. Megalopony plows through the team. It has Scrappy and can hit ghost types with its normal and fighting type moves, and a very strong speed and attack stat, so it could plow through teams very effectively. It doesn't really do much else. It can if it wants to, but normally you're going to see it trying to plow through the team. So it's in general, it's a one-dimensional Pokemon but it does the job really well. Versus Mew, that's kind of like a jack of all trades. It doesn't have one job that it does extremely well, but the benefit of using Mew is that it can do many different things, and that's the element of surprise. It's the poster child of jack of all trades, because it could defend specially, it could defend physically, it could attack physically, it could attack specially, it could attack mixed, it could support, it could do utility, it could do a whole lot of things. So something to consider is, do you want to have Pokemon that can switch up their roles very easily and that have many different roles, or are you going to go for Pokemon that do one role really well, or both? And then sometimes also with the Pokemon that do one role really well, you could switch it up by having them do a different role that they don't do as well, but the element of surprise really works. I did that last league, for example, with Piloswine switching to special attack. It paid off, so sometimes you have to do little things like that too. So here are some questions to ask yourself after you make a draft that maybe like you do an initial draft or you're looking at your team. Does your team fit your desired playstyle or theme? So if you're running a rain dance team, do you have rain setters? If you're running a stall team, do you have enough walls to stall? If you're running a hyper offense team, is your team fast? Can it plow through things? Okay, make sure that your team fits your desired playstyle and theme. A Pokemon that doesn't fit on your playstyle or theme can really weigh you down. Do you have Pokemon on your team that fulfill the roles you need? So if you have a hazard setter, do you have a Pokemon, if you need hazard setup, do you have a Pokemon that could use Stealth Rock? If you're looking to sweep in the rain, do you have a Pokemon with Swift Swim or with strong presence in the rain? Do you have a knockoff Pokemon for Pokemon that you need to knock off? Okay. Do you have reliable cores? Can you come in on a variety of attack? Ask yourself, if I face a strong dragon attack, what am I going to switch into? If I face a strong water attack, what am I going to switch into? If I need to take down a water Pokemon, what am I going to attack with? If I need to take down a fire Pokemon, what am I going to attack with? Do you have things that could cover each other well? This also goes into synergy. Does your team have good resistance and good offense against many different Pokemon? You might want to check, do I have one glaring weakness, or is there one type that's very hard for me to take down? Okay, so that also goes into the core question. Do I have sufficient type immunities? Do you have something that can be immune to not every type, but like a lot of different types? Okay, it's good for you to have. You don't need to have all type immunities, but try to think, maybe let's have some. Can my team handle physical and special attacking and defending? So sometimes you'll encounter very strong special walls, sometimes you'll encounter very strong physical walls. At the same time, physical attackers, special attackers you'll encounter. So you want to make sure that what your team is geared for, it can handle both the physical side of things and the special side of things, and not just one or the other. And then again, does my team have good synergy? Like I mentioned earlier, can you take on a variety of types, both offensively and defensively? And finally, do I like my team? This is a very important question to ask yourself. Remember, this is for fun, and you want to have fun using the Pokemon you like, so don't draft a Pokemon that you don't like just because it fulfills a certain role. You could probably find that role on a different Pokemon that you might like a little bit better. Alright? So, good questions to ask yourself. And then finally, we're going to go into the drafting process. This is just things to consider while you're actively drafting. So first of all, try to get your key Pokemon first. If it's sniped, you could always rethink your concept. So if you have, for example, you're building a team around Mega Swampert sweeping in the rain, you're going to want to get Mega Swampert first, right? If someone, let's say you're building your team and you have Politoed first, and then you have a different Pokemon to set up something for Mega Swampert first, but then someone else gets Mega Swampert, there goes what you were setting up. Okay, so try to get your key Pokemon first. If it's sniped, you could always change up your concept, and it's just not really damaging to you because you don't already have something set up, so you could go a different way. Consider Pokemon popularity. If you feel like a vital Pokemon you have is popular, bump it up on your order, okay? Generally, Pokemon in higher tiers are more popular than the lower ones, so you're going to want to probably draft from the higher tiers first, Mega Pokemon especially, and Tier 1, because they're so limited, so the supply is urgent. So consider that. If you have a Pokemon that you think is really unpopular, you can maybe save it for later, considering that it's not as risky to save it for later versus a Pokemon that's very popular. For example, Mew or Celesteela. Okay, so something to consider. Identify the roles and have backup Pokemon that could fill those roles. So if you have a special sweeper in mind, like Gengar, and it's taken, don't worry. Just think, okay, Gengar was supposed to be a special sweeper. Maybe you wanted specifically a special sweeper that's immune to normal types. No problem. Take a look around. Oh, there's Blacephalon. I could use that. There's Mismagius. I could use that. Okay, identify the role that your Pokemon fulfills and have backups for that role, or know what to look for to fulfill that role, okay? Be aware of other teams and counterpick if necessary. So for example, if you see someone drafting Porygon Z, you might think, ooh, I don't have something for Porygon Z. You could pick up a good Porygon Z counter, for example, Piloswine, which I used last last league. Piloswine can take on the Bolt Beam combo really well, so maybe that. If you see someone drafting Chansey, maybe you're thinking, okay, I want to get Mega Sableye so I could bounce back, so I could taunt it, so I could bounce back Toxic, etc. Okay? Make sure that you are aware of what other people are picking. You don't have to counterpick all your picks, but if you see that you have a glaring weakness versus another team, it's a good thing to try and counterpick or get something to remedy that weakness. Don't despair if a Pokemon you like gets sniped. Like I said earlier, identify the roles, okay? Your playstyle, know what roles you need, know what you could replace that Pokemon that was sniped with, and you'll be fine, okay? And then finally, feel free to look up unfamiliar Pokemon or ask for help from others. You could go on Smogon, check what Pokemon do, see if you like certain Pokemon. You could look up certain moves, for example, like Rapid Spin. You could look up abilities like Unaware and see what Pokemon are in there. And then you could draft with that knowledge in mind. And you could also ask other people what they think. We're all here to help each other out, and we want each other to have fun and to have a good time and get a good team. So don't be afraid to look up information or to ask for information from others. And yeah, learn as you go, have fun. And this is a draft, so make a team that you really like. Alright, so that was my little drafting tips guide. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a good idea of drafting and how you want to go about the next league. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, and remember that signups are now open for Victory Road Draft League Season 2 on FNF. So if you're interested, go ahead and apply. The application is now up. Alright, so enjoy, and I look forward to seeing you in the Draft League and drafting your teams with all these things in mind.